Welcome to the second of 5 videos from the Roman Army 2021 UofW, University of Winnipeg lecture on the state to retirement. This is the last set of videos ever, hopefully. Okay, so this one I want to talk about soldiers' pay. This is sort of a very direct way that the emperors, the state was connected to the soldiers was, they paid them. They gave them the money that allowed them to live. It sounds very dramatic. Okay, so emperors and soldiers, you got to keep the soldiers happy, keep them paid and fed, etc. So, so emperors, remember, have a lot of roles. They become emperor through a variety of means. The Senate remained a popular or an important way of maintaining their position, and certainly in the first century CE into the second, the Senate could work to undermine the position of an emperor. The army was always a big part of being an emperor, and we've sort of touched upon that a little bit with victory, and the people to some degree as well. The emperor had many roles, but yeah. Commander-in-chief, he was in charge of everything or many things and had ultimate authority in a lot of stuff. And his power increased over time as well. So from Augustus, who claimed he was just the first man, among equals, princeps, to Dominus, the Lord, the dominant emperors of late antiquity, had all this power and less land, maybe. So, yes, emperors obviously had a very particular role or relationship with the soldiers, often worked to stress their association with the troops. Very few emperors. You can't see all the soldiers; they're all over the empire. Hadrian's the only one who went all over the place. Some of them traveled a lot. Trajan, for instance, others traveled not so much. So they tried to emphasize their connection through other ways. Through payment and through. Not just through payment, but also for the imagery that you get on the back of coins, their images, victorious images, etc. They like to build themselves as a fellow soldier. So we find in some inscriptions and material, if they're addressing their soldiers, they're not just like their soldiers, they are their fellow soldiers, as if the emperor himself is a soldier, even if he's not. So he may be their paymaster, but he's also one of them, which maybe, it's not always true. And in a lot of cases, the soldiers recognize that, but the soldiers, did tend to feel positively towards those emperors that did have this streak. And you do find some emperors like Trajan at Hatra in his Parthian campaigns playing an active role. He went around the city and took some maybe unnecessary risks. If they could, they would take personal command of all major campaigns. Claudius, who was not part of the initial invasion of Britain, sort of like George W. Bush, came at the end and is like, hey, we won. Okay. But having this military connection and experience, even if you didn't actually have much military experience, was important. And this would stay important for most of Roman history. Okay, now how do you keep them happy? Obviously, payment is a good way to keep soldiers happy. Besides just participating yourself, because there's recognition that the emperor can't be everywhere. It's a big empire. There are other ways to, and actually before I look at the payment, some of the other ways that emperors can stress their connections to particular soldiers, especially ones who served in units that performed especially bravely in a certain conflict, or perhaps supported the emperor when there were periods of unrest and whatever. So they might get honorary titles or new titles that reflected a reigning emperor. So we have, for instance, the Ala Flavia, an auxiliary unit named for the Flavians. In this case, they were formed under them. Sometimes they might get other little epithets that denoted their loyalty. So there's the 7th Legion, the Legio 7 Septim, 1177, the 7th Claudian Legion, which got the name Pia Fideles, for being loyal and faithful. And some later emperors, especially ones sort of the end of the 2nd century into the 3rd century, would put their names on the end of them. And sometimes they were less reputable in some ways. So you get Legio 3rd Augustus Antoniniana, or Legio 3 Augusta, Alexandriana, or Legio 3 Augusta Maximiana. So there you go. And there you can see some of the advertising. Oh, actually, no, there is no money. I lied. I'm not talking about payment. So those are just some of the other ways that they express their connection to the soldiers, by language and titles, with units who performed bravely, or units that were formed when they were emperors, by participating in military actions like Trajan at Hatra, or even going along during a campaign or at the end of a campaign. And yes, this was an important part of the state. Okay, that's it for the second short video on emperors and soldiers.